Welcome to Jersey City Boxing Fan, where I am not an expert, I'm just a fan. Listen, I'm still riding high from my last video interview conversation with Buddy McGirt. Still can't believe that happened, and it was awesome, a pleasure talking to him. What a great guy. So today we have boxing matchup day 5. Who would win a lightweight fight between 1973 Roberto Duran or 1988 Pernell Sweet Pea Whitaker? Roberto Duran, okay, manos de piedra, hands of stone, best lightweight ever, in my opinion. Born in June 1951, he fought from 1968, and his last fight was in 2001. That's 5 decades that he fought in. Can you believe that? He fought in 5 decades, the 1960s, 70s, 80s, 90s, and the 2000s. Finished his career with a record of 103 wins, 16 losses. But here's the critical point. He had 70 KOs. 70. 7-0. That puts him really high in the all-time knockout ratio for champions. He was from Guarare, Panama. Hope I'm pronouncing that right. From Panama, and he held world championship titles in the lightweight, welterweight, light middleweight, and the middleweight divisions, as well as undisputed reigns and lineal champion reigns as well. All right, first 12 years of his career, he's trained by the great Ray Arcel. This guy, I mean, is a boxing treasure, was a boxing treasure. I think he was born in the late 1800s, like 1899, around then. And he trained boxers right up into Larry Holmes, I think, was probably one of the last people he trained. But Ray Arcel, man, if you look, there's a really cool video on YouTube where he's being interviewed, I think, by Dick Cavett. And he goes into just a lot of his boxing knowledge, his expertise. He's a really, really great guy, really great guy, and a lot of boxing knowledge there.
About Jack Dempsey. Well, none of us knew anything about Jack Dempsey at that particular time. And I was just a high school boy going, this 1916 I'm talking about. That's quite a few years ago.
Interesting thing about Ray Arcel, I may do a video on him at one point, is that he actually got beat up with a pipe and actually kind of threatened, and he ended up having to stay out of boxing for a while. I think Duran was the first person that he kind of came back with. All right. Duran's mother was from Guarare. His father was from Arizona. I didn't know that. Of Mexican descent, but from Arizona. Roberto Duran won the title in June in 1972 against the great Scottish fighter Ken Buchanan. Some drama in that fight. Ken Buchanan was losing the fight. I mean, Duran was beating him pretty soundly, but I think at the end of the 13th round, the bell went off and Duran didn't hear it, and he kind of kept punching. And if you look at the video, it almost looks like the ref tried to stop him from punching. It kind of held his arm down, and Duran hit Kenny Buchanan low, and he never recovered from it. He never was able to come back and fight again. So Duran actually, it was accidental, and so Duran was winning the fight anyway, though. But Kenny Buchanan, great fighter as well, and really good interviews with him online. Duran, now listen, a lot of people outside of boxing know Roberto Duran for the no mas fight, where he supposedly said no mas. He denies it. Other people have denied it. I think the ref said he said no mas, but that was in his fight with the second fight with Sugar Ray Leonard, okay? But you got to realize, for 10 years before that, he ruled the lightweight division. So this is toward, the latter part of his career, if you look at most boxers, right? I feel like, he just, for whatever reason, was getting kind of beat by Leonard. It was a close fight up to the point he quit or couldn't continue, but there, I think he talked about other issues causing that. It wasn't just that he quit. There was things going on. All right. The first 10 years of his boxing career, or first 12 years of his boxing career, he only had 1 loss, and it was in a non-title fight to Esteban de Jesus. Man, I keep hearing this guy's name, Esteban de Jesus, man. This guy beat Duran when Duran was in his prime. I mean, it wasn't a title fight. I'm not sure why it was. It might have been something to do with making weight. But Duran did beat him 2 times after that, with a KO 2 years later and a TKO in 1978. But Esteban de Jesus knocked Duran down, I think, in 2 of those fights. Tough guy. I think there's a sad story with him too. Like, he had a rough life. Duran beat Sal Mombi. This guy, Sal Mombi, comes up too in 1976. In my interview with Buddy McGirt, he talked about Sal Mombi and how that was a turnaround fight in his career. All right, so after he quits against Sugar Ray Leonard or whatever happened, he comes back and he's starting to come back, and he gets a fight with Davey Moore in 1983. Duran was a huge underdog in this fight. If you see pictures of Davey Moore looked like a beast, man. He's like cut, ripped, and going into the fight, people thought Davey Moore was going to beat Duran. But Davey Moore didn't have that many fights under his belt, so he's inexperienced. And you could just see, man, Duran chipping away at him and, pressuring him, Duran was a tough dude. And there's actually one point in the fight, I remember watching it recently, where you actually see Duran, he knows it. Like, it's like when he got the guy hurt and he knew, he's like, I got him now, definitely. And he just stood looking at him for a second and then continued with the punching. So once Duran got someone hurt, he was so smart. 1983, he loses a really close bout with Hagler, and it's only like a 1-point difference. Hearns, he fights Tommy Hearns in 1984 and gets destroyed in that fight. I don't know what happened coming in. Maybe there were issues, but that's the only fight. There's only like 2 fights in Duran's career of those like 34 years of his career that he gets destroyed. He gets destroyed in Tommy Hearns' fight. Then, fight of the year, 1989, he beat Iran Barkley, and that was a really exciting and close fight, but that was another fight similar where Duran hung in there, and actually ends up knocking down Iran Barkley in a later round. 1996, Camacho beat Duran, but did Duran really win? There's a lot of controversy over that one. What do I think about Duran? He adapts really well. He was one of the smartest boxer punchers I've seen. I mean, you'd see him in a fight, adapting as the rounds are going on, learning how to counter punch and get away from the opponent's punches. He had great punching power, great stamina, great persistence. Interesting thing about Duran also, he was in Rocky 2. I'm shocked by this. I've seen the Rockies a million times, and I did not know that he was in the training scene in the ring with Sylvester Stallone. Sylvester Stallone actually said about Roberto Duran that, he kind of thought like, I've been doing these boxing movies, I'm training, and Duran apparently hurt him pretty bad and kind of taught Sylvester Stallone, don't even try to play, you're not a boxer. Duran had a lot of interesting opinions about the Panama invasion when the U.S. invaded Panama. We won't get into that, but he actually felt that it might have hurt the country. And another interesting, Miles Davis recorded the song in tribute to Roberto Duran. And his 2 main defeats that he got destroyed, Tommy Hearns and William Joppy, they were the only people to really annihilate him with true fight-ending TKOs. Now we move on to Pernell Whitaker. Pernell Whitaker, born in January of 1964. Sadly, he passed away last year. So sad. And this guy had a lot to give to boxing still, and it's sad that happened. Born in Norfolk, Virginia, he fought from 1984 to 2001. Record 40 wins, 4 losses, 1 draw, and 1 no contest. They changed the result after the fight. He won Olympic gold in 1984. He's one of the best defensive fighters in history. And this is before Floyd Mayweather. Pernell Whitaker is just top-notch. His defense was amazing. He was a southpaw. He was mainly a counter puncher. He beat Roger Mayweather, the Mexican assassin. And if you see in my a couple videos ago, I put up some stuff about Roger Mayweather talking about how great Pernell Whitaker was. I mean, he lost to Pernell, but he said that Pernell Whitaker was one of the best fighters ever. I agree. Pernell Whitaker, he beat Greg Haugen for the title in 1989. He beat Jose Luis Ramirez, Azuma Nelson, Juan Nazario, Jorge Paez, Harold Brazier. 2 fights with Buddy McGirt. The interesting thing about that, and again, I bring up, I just did my interview with Buddy McGirt, is that in the first Buddy McGirt fight, I didn't quite realize, man, Buddy McGirt did an amazing job. And this is before Pernell really lost. He lost earlier in his career, and he really should have won that fight. And if only one round was different, if Buddy McGirt won one more round, I think on two of the judges' scorecards, it would have been a draw. I mean, that's how close that fight was. He had the controversial draw with Julio Cesar Chavez, which I think Whitaker won. Wilfredo Rivero, Diobelis Hurtado. In that fight, he was down twice and deducted a point and down on all the cards when, at the end, Pernell Whitaker showed power when he needed it in the 11th round and knocked out Diobelis Hurtado. He had losses to De La Hoya and Trinidad later in his career, and one career-ending loss that there was an injury. But, in my opinion, how I look at it, Pernell Whitaker went undefeated from 1984 until he lost to De La Hoya in 1997. And I do think he lost to De La Hoya. I judged that fight recently. Sadly, in 2019, as I said before, he was crossing the street in Virginia Beach, and he was struck by a vehicle, and he didn't make it, and it's very sad. So again, in my mind, Pernell Whitaker lost 2 times, to Trinidad and De La Hoya. Those are the only times he really suffered defeat, in my opinion. All right, we move on to the Facebook comments. My buddy Billy Batts says that Hands of Stone is going to win that fight. They're 2 great fighters, but Hands of Stone is winning that fight. We got Brian, my buddy Brian, saying Duran. If he beat Sugar Ray in 15, he could have taken Whitaker. My buddy Tommy, it's not a race around the ring, so he thinks Duran's winning it. Me, how do I feel about this? This was the tough one for me. Duran is probably in my top 3 fighters ever. Like, I love Roberto Duran. When I think about this matchup, man, I don't know. I feel like Pernell frustrated a lot of fighters, and I hate saying this, but I think Duran would come, be relentless and keep pushing, but I think Pernell would move and outbox him and outpoint him. If I answer this tomorrow, I might think differently about it. It's one of those things that I really don't know. But right now, I kind of feel like Pernell could beat a Roberto Duran. My buddy Matt, he says this is one of the great hypothetical matchups ever. He feels differently from me. Matt kind of feels like, he sees it as Whitaker running, jabbing, weaving for 5 or 6 rounds. Maybe he steals a couple rounds with a stinging jab, but then he says murder. He says a prime Duran is going to catch Whitaker. He says he caught De Jesus, who was lightning quick. He caught Mambi, who was hard to hit. And he just thinks Duran would charge, trap Whitaker in a corner, not let him out until Whitaker was a bloody mess, and that it would be a KO, a legit KO in round 6. So, yeah, I mean, I could see that too, man. I definitely can. I got my buddy Ray saying that, Sweet Pea was no Sugar Ray, and that Duran would win that fight also. So, interesting with the Facebook comments. It seems as though, am I the only one who picked Pernell Whitaker? I don't know what that says about me, but I love Roberto Duran. Okay, so wrapping this video up, just want to talk about a couple things. One would be that Pernell Whitaker, for all his greatness, and he was great, I never really enjoyed watching his fights. Me and my dad, that's when we were really watching all the fights on HBO back in the late 80s, early 90s, and we would watch those fights, and, they tended to be boring a lot of the times. Why? Because Whitaker was just too good. Too great of a boxer and too great defensively that not a lot happened in his fights. He would just outpoint people, and there might not be a lot of action, but hey, that's his job. He did the right thing, right? That's how you win, and if that's your style, that's what you're going to do. Sometimes it made for a little bit of a boring fight, kind of like how Floyd's fights at times can be. Floyd Mayweather could be a little bit boring also. Duran, I think, had more of a like, he knew in his head, he had more of a knowledge for the dramatic, or he knew that he wanted to make a show of it sometimes. And even the way he boxed sometimes, you saw that. He was very, the macho, and the way he would just conduct himself. He knew it was part of a show. But, You know, both great fighters, amazing fighters. I couldn't find really Jersey City connections. I always try to end it with a Jersey City connection, and in this one, I couldn't really find one other than, you know, just that Pernell did fight Buddy McGirt, who trained in Jersey City, but you know, I can't find a lot of stuff. All right, hopefully soon. I broke my foot, which has not been fun. I've been in a cast for about 4 weeks now, in a boot. Sorry, not a cast, a boot, and it's really annoying. But I'm gonna try soon when I get out of my boot to do a video in Jersey City of all the places where boxing took place. Such a great boxing town in the past, and I'm gonna actually go to these locations in Jersey City and show what they used to look like, hopefully, and then what they look like now. All right, thanks a lot for watching. I am Jersey City boxing fan. I am not an expert, I am just a fan.